Good morning, everybody, and welcome to Living Astrology with Janet Hickox. Grab your cup of coffee or your tea, sit back, and let's chat about what's going on in the sky above us today. May 5th, happy Cinco de Mayo for those of you who celebrate that. I know we always celebrate with chips and dip or with guacamole and salsa, Corona beer. Oh gosh, the fun things that we have to do right now, right? The things that we get ourselves into. So I hope everybody is having a great day. So far, so good this morning. It's turning out to maybe be a sunny, bright day. It looked like we might even break 70 degrees for the first time later this week. Woohoo! Spring is really here in the air, and I hope it is as cheery and sunny where you are. And even if it isn't, you can make it cheery and sunny with your own personal attitude. All right, so what do we have on tap for us today? Well, today we seem to have a hodgepodge of transits creating small waves of change, both within us and without us or outside of us or in our outer world. The potential here for change today is pretty high. Interesting because we're only 2 days out from the full moon, which is usually bringing things to completion. But the concept of the spiral of consciousness takes us beyond just our limited ideas of what the moon should be doing or what something should mean. And today it seems to be pointing us in the direction of change. And that can be a disruptive thing, but it can also be a really good thing. And today we're going to talk about two specific things that are leading us in that direction. One of them is a minor astrological transit, and the other being our Pleiadian-Earth energy for the day. So I'm going to make a quick run over here to YouTube and say good morning to everybody. Monique, good morning. And Phantom Chroma, good morning. Debbie Johnson, good morning. And Phantom Chroma says, your hair looks nice up. Sorry if that's weird. Nope, that's not weird. So get this. This morning, I threw my hair forward, like you guys. My hair is like out of control right now because it is long. It hasn't been cut or thinned out, and it tends to frizz, when it gets like that. And I have a lot of hair. So this morning, I'm just throwing it forward and throwing it up, but it was wet. So I had to take it back down to dry it. And I thought, you know what? It was so nice just to have it up and off my shoulders and not worry about it blowing around in my face. That's what I did. So thank you very much, Phantom Chroma. Amanda Jeffs, good morning. My first time here. Usually listen to the podcast. I'm in the UK, the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for joining us, Amanda. And thank you for letting me know that you joined us before on the podcast. I'm having some fun times trying to get that podcast up every day because YouTube, different from Facebook, takes a long time to process the live video so that I can download it. So this morning I got wise and I hit record on the Zoom session before I started the live so that I have access to that recording earlier. But I'm so happy to have you join us, and I'm sure everybody will wish you well and say good morning to you. Jennifer Peachy, good morning, and Marissa Stanton, good morning. It is so good to see all of you out there this morning. So let's dive in to talk a little bit about what it is that we have today that is going to create this change. And when I talk about change today, it's not those big earth crashing kinds of changes that Uranus can often bring to us, right? The things that we don't see coming, the blindside hits, the sort of rebellious sort of things that happen. Today's changes are more calculated than that. And they are more of a small wave function, right? We can have those big waves that crash over us, but these would be more of the smaller waves. That doesn't mean that some of you won't be experiencing some of the bigger changes that can happen as well, but likely it would be because of a series of small changes leading to the bigger changes. So the first transit that we'll talk about today is Mars in a quintile to Uranus. So we have the planet of change, but we have a quintile between the planet of change, Uranus, and the planet of action, Mars. And a quintile is a minor aspect. And I just love how astrology kind of calculates these things as minor and major, or, beneficent and not, because really those are making value judgments on these particular planets. And they're completely impersonal. I mean, it's not like they're judging you or making you do something. They're just sort of these triggers behind the scenes. And then the relationship as these planets come together form the opportunities for us to change or to do something more or to explore our emotional selves, etc. But a quintile is a 72-degree angle or relationship between the planets. It means that if I take the 360-degree circle and I divide it by 5, I would get 72. So we're cutting the astrological circle, if you will, or the zodiac wheel into 5 parts. And a quintile then creates a space where some really awesome things can happen when you are willing to show up, right? When you're willing to use your gifts and your talents in ways that allow you to move forward or to expand beyond where you are currently. So here today, then, what we're trying to do is find ways to express our creativity in new ways or in a changed way. Maybe something has opened up for you. Maybe you've realized something really special about yourself and or a special skill that you have, or maybe it's just that you have the time right now to be able to express yourself differently. So today's that day. We also may find unusual ways to solve problems today, as these are things we go about doing things in the usual way, right? Everyday business, right? We think we see a problem and then we move forward toward that problem in a specified way that's unique to you. Well, perhaps today then we can think of solutions that are different, that are outside of the realm of the usual, that break our connection to that psychosis. Remember, Pluto and Jupiter had been sitting together at the gate 61 in your human design. It is a gate up here on the head center that leads down toward the ajna. And it's a gate that in the shadow energy, which is pretty prevalent on the planet at the moment, where psychosis happens, right? Where we keep trying to do the same things over and over again, but expecting a different result. And that's really literally insanity and psychosis making. So we're looking today for unusual ways to solve problems. It may occur to you today that, what if I did this? What if I did that? What if I didn't do something the same way that I always do it? What would happen? So we're breaking out of those old patterns and we're breaking out of that psychosis from these small little wave momentums that come through that create the possibility for more and more change. Now, it's interesting to look at the gate that human design that Mars will be sitting at. And I don't know why I chose Mars and not Uranus, maybe because we've talked about Uranus sitting at the gate 27, which is a gate of nurturing, right? Where we're learning to live by the values of the tribe that nurtures our young, nurtures our old, or nurtures our workers, and takes care of, right? And passes on, feeds, clothes, provides for all of humanity as a family energy, as opposed to class energy, which is what we've been living, right? So we're moving to a new way of being with one another. So when I looked at Mars, Mars is sitting at the gate 30, which intensifies all of the energy that of our charts for the next 7 days, from May 5th until May 12th. Mars will be sitting at this gate 30, which is the gate of desire. We talked about this a ways back, maybe end of December and January, where this particular gate, as it amps up all of the energy in a chart, takes us into that territory where we want something so bad and we're holding on, just with our claws dug in because we really want that great job, that relationship, that marriage, that, what financial security, our good health, healing, whatever it is that we want, we hold on to it with such tightness, right? And it creates desire then as a shadow energy on the planet, as opposed to where its real purpose is, which is to hold it with lightness. The gift energy of Mars right now in this particular gate is about holding those desires with lightness and with wonder and with the sort of attitude of unattachment, right? Detached from the outcome and holding it with just wonder and how is this going to look? When is this going to happen? What kind of magic might occur here? Without holding on to that specific way of thinking that this specific thing should happen for you, right? So in other words, we're sort of becoming the observers as well as we step back a bit and we watch the change rolling through our life, and we watch how that change brings us closer and closer to our desire when we detach from that desire. It's sort of upside down thinking almost, right? Because we think, oh, I want that, and I have to focus on that, and I have to wait and hold on and scrape and get there. But that's not how the universe actually works. The universe really works. You could certainly keep your mind focused on what you desire, but in an open and light sort of way. Like if you really want that specific job, you could always add on this. You can keep focused on what the traits are in the job that you really want. Maybe it's the ability to work from home. Maybe it's more pay, better working conditions, better, I don't know, all the different things that people like about or want in a job. And you hold on to those traits while still moving forward toward perhaps that specific company and that type of thing, where you're not going to hold on so tightly because you can say this or something better, right? This or something better. So these wave changes coming through, holding space for you to be able to move forward, but with a lightness as opposed to a cloying tightness that this gate that Mars is sitting at can trigger in us. So hopefully that's understandable for everybody. The intensity and the passion isn't what the problem is. So it's not wrong or bad for you to have passion or to be, intensely desiring of something. It's that you have to watch how tightly you're holding on to the way that you think it should happen, or when it should happen, or who it should happen with, because the universe is the bigger source of all that is, and it has a bigger picture of what it is that is possible, right? What more is possible. So it's a little bit of magical thinking in with the openness to change and with waiting for the unusual or the different to occur in your life. So I'm going to check back over here in YouTube, make sure everybody understands that, see what everybody's thinking here. Good morning, Linda Marie and Sue. Good morning to you. Amy Moore, good to see you. Tanya Middleton, another new person. Love it. Tanya, welcome to you as well. And if it's your first time, a lot of what we are talking about may be a little confusing to you, unless you've been listening to me behind the scenes, which is possible because I post these daily videos up on YouTube and also in podcast form on Blog Talk. So some of you may have been hearing these types of things. And if not, and you're brand new to astrology even, try not to get caught up in the verbiage and all of the ideas. Just sort of sit back and relax and stay open. And by the way, if this is your first time here, you are always welcome to go to my website, www.living-astrology.com. If you forget the hyphen, you end up on someone else's website. And luckily, he emails people back and tells them, I think you've reached the wrong site. So living-astrology.com and request your free human design chart and report, and or your free astrology chart and a little bit of an explanation of the setup of that chart. And it's completely free, and you can do that anytime. And oh, by the way, a lot of you, I'm sure, once you get your own charts, you're likely going, oh, wow, I would love to get one for my son or daughter or spouse or sister, or cousin, uncles, aunt, whatever. If you want to do that, you can do that. But don't go back in and fill out the form, because if you do, it's going to keep wanting you to subscribe as an email. Instead, send me an email at janet@living-astrology.com with your spouses or sons or daughters' birthdays and birth times and birthplaces, and I can send you those charts. Okay? All right. So going back to what else is up in the air today in terms of change, we also have some really good energy coming in through the Pleiadian-Earth energy. I'm kind of going at this in a little bit different manner this morning because I wanted to kind of emphasize the energies of change and what's happening with that first, and then we'll go into the moon's placement today and what that might be bringing to us as well. So remember, we're talking about these small waves of change that are coming through, and today's wave through the Pleiadian-Earth energy calendar. And again, if you're new, this is what that looks like, right? You can get this calendar. And when you open up the calendar, here's what May looks like. You get this beautiful picture with loving energy. That's our energy right now, our umbrella energy on the planet. And you get what looks like a Gregorian calendar because the Gregorian calendar is there as well. But you also see the date has a name, right? So here's our earth energy for the day. And this is our universal energy. Right now, for the first 13 days in May, those energies match the Gregorian calendar. But you'll see quickly, once we get past the 13th day, we start again at 1 because we're looking at a 13-day week. And that week represents a spiral of consciousness. And we enter a new spiral on May 14th at one being, one being. And so this calendar charts that spiral of consciousness rather than the very mechanical day by day of our Gregorian calendar, but it incorporates both since we're used to sort of living from that calendar. So today's energy is 5 choosing. Amazingly enough, the number 5 represents the universal energy of the day. So no matter what life form you are, no matter what planet you might be on in this solar system, you are resonating with the energy of 5, which is the invitation or the opportunity to change. And then we have that coupled with the earth energy of choosing, which is the responsibility of choice. Now, in the Mayan calendar, choosing energy was represented by the word ebb, and that symbol or that hieroglyph in the Mayan calendar sort of represented a road where we come to the fork in the road, or we come to a choice point even, where we have to choose. Are we going to go right or left? Or are we going straight? Are we going backwards? So we come to a choice point today. Now, that combined with that energy of change, we're realizing possibilities through expansion and change. So yesterday we were in the 4 energy, which was that pause, right? We come to that stability, that foundation point. And at that point, there really is no real opportunity to make change because we're integrating, right? Yesterday was integration and bringing things to that standstill. And then today's energy moves on with this energy of choice, where we can expand through making the choice to expand. Being flexible and adaptable here at a day like this creates those expansion opportunities, or the being open to that kind of change or openness to the opportunities that are coming up helps us to make the adjustments that we need to in order to move forward, right? Sometimes we kind of get caught up in that space where we don't want to move or we don't want to change. We want things to stay the same, the way they've always been, but they won't ever do that, right? It never happens. The only thing that we can really count on is change. And that is what we're doing today. We are consciously connecting with this energy of change. And then we're also connecting with that energy of choice. So change and choice, choosing from love, not fear. And that's huge right now because every day we are faced with different types of choices that we have to make. And we either make those choices with that fear field, right? Yesterday we talked about the moon moving through those fear gates. Well, today the moon is also, it's not done with us in those fear gates yet of the spleen. Let's take a look right now. Actually, I wanted to show that to you. I think that's it. So hold on, let's share my screen with the human design chart on it for the day. And we can see that the moon today is sitting at the gate 57, right here on the spleen, which is a gate of the fear of the future. And I think a lot of people may be feeling that one right now, like what comes next, right? How do we get back to the business of living our lives out loud, out there in the world? What happens if we have another second wave of this virus, and how does that affect us if we have to go backwards again? And so I think there's a lot of fear that the moon may be generating for us on the future, but it is all about here remembering that we always have the choice in how we approach that change, right? We can do that with an open mind and an open heart and with love, or we can be constrictive in our approach, and we can be fearful, and we can try to hold on as tight as we can. But usually what happens when you release, right? Everything just tends to flow where it belongs. So that's what the moon is bringing us today. So we see today we have a connection going on. Remember, is it Monday? What day is today? It's Tuesday. So I think it was yesterday when we looked at this chart, it was all white because we didn't have any channels connected up. Today we have channels connected up between the south node at gate 10 and the moon at the gate 57. Now that won't last for the whole of the day. That will change and morph and move on. How appropriate, right? That the moon is moving and will change up even the configuration of our human design charts here as well today. So we may discover on a day like today, for example, where it is that we're caught up in that energy of stagnant or being rigid, where we have where our old mindset perhaps or our old way of being has kept us or prevented us from choosing something new or making new choices or making better choices. So today we may wake up in some ways and go, whoa, I see where I have been caught up in this thinking pattern. And what would happen if I just released that and moved on into a new way? This is also a day for us to remember how we are all connected, right? That we are connected to all things, to all possibilities, to all the energies. So when I talk about someone's human design and immediately they realize, wow, I don't have that gate, or I don't have that channel, or I don't have that center. You do. We all have all of the human design. You all have all of your astrology chart. You all have something in every sign, right? Even if it's not a planet, it may just be the point that it starts at that gives you some energy. So we all have everything. We are all whole and complete, right? All of us. And this is a day where we remember that we have all the skills, all of the knowledge within us to make decisions when we come to these choice points. And I guess the biggest thing for us as human beings is often that we want to choose from that fear instead of from love. So choosing from love, right? That's our energy today. And as those waves of change come upon you today, and it may not just be today, it could be, over the course of this particular week, because there's a lot changing even in the astrological landscape. Remember, today is the day that the nodal axis will shift, and that will shift us out of the Cancer Capricorn energy of the collective life purpose, soul purpose, and into the more Gemini and Sagittarius experiences. So certainly the way that we look at the world will be in change. And the fact that the North Node comes into the sign of Gemini, I find hopeful as maybe instead of change being thrust upon us, and then our reacting it with chaos and craziness, maybe as change comes upon us now, we can respond from a place of pause, right? A pause, breathing, and then choosing consciously instead of reactionary energy. That last time that the nodes were in this part of the zodiac, we encountered something called terrorism via the events of 9/11. And I would say that likely, I'm not going to say that what we did or did at the time was right or wrong, but I'm going to say that we didn't react with love, right? We did not. We reacted out of fear, out of our knee-jerk collective at the time, which was still around safety and security and making things stable. And what if something else were to happen? And maybe the coronavirus is the vehicle for this, but what if rather than reactivity, we're learning about responding? Because in response, right, it's the root of responsibility. In response, we can choose consciously rather than what happens when we are in reaction, which is usually instinctual, right? It's that fight, flight, or freeze. And we are, in that old survival mode based on fear instead of the thriving mode based on choice. Ooh, that gives me chills when I think about that. So all of that begins with each of us as we make our individual choices about how we interact with each other and how we interact with what's going on in the world around us. Cool. All right. Hopefully everybody gets that. I'm going to go switch back over here. Oh, hello, Sadie. And let's see. Good morning, Allison says. And Amy says, yes, it's so helpful to have your own chart to look at. Absolutely. And again, for those of you who are kind of new, I always recommend that you get a little notebook, a 3-ring, little notebook, and you put your chart in it and any other information about you, your human design chart, your human design report, and keep that for these morning shows so that when I'm talking about something that's going on, you have your own reference that you can look at and see what it means for you. Okay, so much anxiety and panic attacks. Is that for you, Phantom? Are you the one feeling that, or are you experiencing that through friends or other relatives? And Allison, doesn't a planet go retrograde on May 14th? Absolutely. It's actually May 13th. Venus will turn retrograde. It's actually over the 13th and 14th. I always forget. I'm on the West Coast. I get things 3 hours earlier than you all. So it may be just over. Do I have a time for that? Hold on. The 13th, Venus goes retrograde at 11:49 p.m. on the 12th. So for me on the West Coast, it'll be next Tuesday. For you all on the East Coast, it will be next Wednesday that Venus turns retrograde. And then on the 14th itself, Jupiter turns retrograde. So we have 2 retrogrades later this month, actually. And on the 10th, which is just this coming Sunday, Saturn turns retrograde. So we have a lot of retrograde energy, a lot of turning inward energy, a lot of ability to do self-analysis, to become more self-aware, to really look at your own personal path of evolution. So really, this is a month both of a lot of inner focus and how does that inner focus affect what's going on in the outer world, your outer world. So hopefully that answers your question, Allison and Deborah Johnson, or something, myself and others. Okay, so panic and anxiety are big things that happen here in the human template. So remember, I'm going to go back to our human design chart for a moment so I can show this to everybody. This center here, the spleen, and it's not anatomically correct. So the centers are not about anatomy. These are just energy. And this energy center is the center for time, intuition, survival, health, and it brings us into it's actually the oldest of the energy centers that developed in the human template, in the human design. And it had a purpose, and its purpose was to help us survive and thrive. And imagine, centuries, millennia ago, as human beings were first on the planet, what other life forms there were on this planet with us that we might need to, be aware of and to learn to fear so that we would stay away from them. Snakes and spiders, and I don't know, maybe some kind of dinosaurs or big cats, big animals that wanted to, hunt us as a source of food. But we also had survival energies related to eating and shelter and staying alive in a world that didn't have all the ease of and grace of this particular world, right? We could just toddle off to the grocery store and do some shopping and have food. No, they had to go out and gather, or they had to go out and hunt. And, eventually they learned to cultivate and grow food. So during our earlier evolution, this particular center kept us alive. And oh my God, there are 7 billion of us on the planet. It did its job. But as time has gone by, and this particular center hasn't really changed much, and we are about to let go of this energy center as the primary focus for our survival, if you will. Instead, we're going to go into thriving energy based on the emotional center, or the solar plexus, which means that right now there is a lot of fears. We're having to learn to let go of that fear, to release ourselves from that fear-based intuition, and instead go with the knowingness, the body wisdom that we hold, that tells us, it alerts us to danger. It alerts us when we're about to eat something we shouldn't eat. But we've sort of stopped listening to that. And eventually here, we will pull the power, the real power and the strength in this center is that intuitive knowing. right? That knowingness, that alert that you get that something might be going on with my mom, so I'm going to call her, or a sense, right? I one time had this sense, and it was probably one of the spookiest things that have ever happened to me in my life, where I'm sitting in my living room and all of a sudden I tune in to a friend that I know has just tried to commit suicide. And I don't know why I know that. I don't know how I know that. But I listened and I went and I got my husband. I said, "You need to drive me right now over to her house. And because something's wrong. I don't know how I know it, but I just know it." And sure enough, there she was lying on the floor in a pool of blood. She had slit her wrists. And I mean, why? How? I mean, how does that happen, right? But it's there for all of us. We can tap into it at any time. And it doesn't always have to be those kind of traumas that we can tune into, although I wonder if the energy field is just more powerful in that and we can pick that up easier. But we can tune into anything. We just have to learn to tune it out. So we can, as we develop more and more along the lines of knowingness instead of fear, we can release ourselves from that panic and that anxiety, instead just taking a breath, centering ourselves, even if it's just for a second or two, and then responding, right, rather than reacting. So that is one area. This area is huge in terms of creating that anxiety and that panic. The other area in our chart has to do with our minds and the creating of anxiety and panic by what we think. And how many of you, raise your hand, believe that when you have a big decision that you have to think about it, that you have to think it through, that you have to go up here and design the pros and the cons, and then decide best based on what, shows up in those columns. And the more you think about something, the more anxiety you feel, the more you start to panic, because now there's this indecision that can come up. And if you are already in fear because, oh my gosh, I don't have a job and now there's this job opportunity, but I really don't necessarily want that job, but I have to take a job because I need that money. And right, it's going round and round and round. That thinking, that very process creates anxiety, because this particular center, even including the head center, is a center with no energy for making decisions. None. It's only an awareness center. So you can be aware of these thoughts. You can be aware of the need to make a choice. You can be aware of the pros and the cons, or the list of things and that type of thing. But when it comes down to it, that awareness is only that. It isn't where you make decisions. In human design, we learn we make the decisions from typically these four places, the motors, depending on which one of these might be colored in for you. Some people will make a decision from the spleen, their intuition or their knowingness, and others will make it from the identity center, which is really just pure I want, or I desire, or who I am. And those centers from below the throat are the only places in the body that have the energy to make decisions. And each one has its specific strategy through which you embrace that decision making. And each one of you, as a type, has a strategy for making those decisions. So it's a completely different way of thinking about how we make decisions, but it's one that will take you out of that panic and out of that anxiety, because you're listening to your body's wisdom and not your mind. The mind clouds it up. The body has it straight, right? The other center, there's one other center where I see all the centers have the potential for creating panic or fear. But the ego center here is another one that is defined in only 1/8 of the population. It is the center for managing and allocating resources, time, money, energy. And it is an energy that is often about competition and endurance, persevering, pushing. And when it's open in 7/8 of the population, it's open. It looks just like it does here. In 7/8 of the population, you do not have this defined. So you tend to amplify that energy of competition, or you amplify that energy of needing to keep going and going and going. when you really don't have the energy to do it. So instead, it becomes a source of burnout, a source of heart attacks and heart stresses that create palpitations or high blood pressures or anxiety, right? Anxiety. So the pushing of the river, trying to make things happen, is another huge source of anxiety in our human template when we're using this energy incorrectly. And finally, and maybe not finally, the root center. This can be a pressure center. It is a pressure of doing. It's what causes us often to, instead of being, we do, right? Instead of just waiting or attracting things to come to us, that really, proof positive that this is my next step. Instead, we push ourselves outward to do something, right? We feel pressure to do. So you can see when we are living our, sometimes in human design, we call this our not self, where we're living this energy that isn't truly our own. That puts a lot of pressure and panic and anxiety making energies upon us. And if we make decisions from that place, then we're living from fear and not from love. So it can be quite amazing when you connect with your human design and you begin to live from your truth and your authenticity rather than from fear or from the sort of shadowy energy that the world seems to make you think you need to live from. So I hope that's helpful and not confusing to a bunch of people, but if so, we can have a deeper conversation on that some other time. So let's see, comments. Elisa, good morning. Phantom says, oh, wow, intuition saved the day. Indeed, many times in my life, I've had these experiences. And what's interesting about that is I have an open spleen. I don't have a defined spleen. So for me, it's not consistent. It comes in waves and comes in different, in different ways. Sometimes it's very powerful dreams. Sometimes it's that experience of, I just know. Comes in the form of angel appearances. So, an open spleen does not have a definitive way of receiving that intuition, where if you're someone who has a defined spleen, it's likely more predictable within you how you're going to react to fear or what situations are going to bring you fear. So, and how your intuition works is more set in stone. Where those of us who have it open are entertaining fears as they rise in the collective or from the people that are in our world or from situational type of fear, but also our intuition works that same way. We can't always count on it to come in the exact same way every time. So that's why in your open centers, you cannot count on that energy to always be there for you because it's temporary, right? It's either because of a transit that's happening or the interjection of someone else's energy into your energy field that has defined it. So conditioning is a big part of how our experience on the planet that we need to sort of undo in order for us to be able to live as authentically as we individually are meant to live. Okay. I don't see any big questions out there about that. So cool. So Sue does ask a question. She says, some people like to stay away from them. I would never, I would say it's not loving to hands down say to stay away from people or from certain people. But the most loving thing you can do for yourself is if you do have to be around someone, is to understand what you might be reactive to in that person or from that person that they may trigger for you, and to have very capable coping strategies before you go to meet them. So like there are certain family members that I have that trigger me in almost every time, no matter how advanced a being I believe myself to be, that person gets in my field and it's all gone. It's all gone. Like I'm down on the, ground with the lowest of, energies where I just want to, but I know now that that person is going to trigger that for me. So I have coping strategies, right? Before that person even enters the room, I have surrounded myself with as much love and I've sent that out so that that person is picking that vibe up from me because I know, right? I know. Now there are times that, where people just aren't good for you, and maybe until you can develop that coping strategy, you do need to keep yourself a little bit removed. And CR Bull says, what is that person reflecting to you, and what was the lesson learned? Yeah, exactly. And once, by the way, you learn that lesson from that person, they don't show up in that same capacity for you anymore. That's fascinating too, right? They just sort of either move out of your sphere and you don't see them very often, or maybe you don't see them ever again. They move away. Or the next time you see them or they're in your field, you just don't see that trigger anymore. So it's not there for you to react to. So it's kind of extraordinary how that happens with all of us. Okay, now I'm not sharing my screen anymore. Cool. So let's talk about the moon today. The moon is in Libra. So again, we have the seeking of harmony and balance. Now, I want to say a word about harmony and balance and equilibrium, because there's sort of a false premise here with Libra energy. It's the scales, and we think of keeping the scales in balance, but is it ever really in balance, right? Even if you have two weights of equal weights on a scale, and someone walks past and vibrates the ground, or a breeze blows through, what happens to the scale? For a short time, it's out of balance again. So the idea of equilibrium or balance or harmony that that will always be there is sort of a false assumption, because it could never be that way, right? It can't always be that way, because something is always changing, either in the environment, even the temperature. Let's say it got cold and your heater turns on, then suddenly your scale is going to wobble a little. So it's a process then of the moon in Libra helping to keep us harmonized, right? So if something does happen on one end, to bring it down or bring it up, because if one's down, then the other's moving up, right? It's that we have the ability to bring it back into some semblance of a harmony or an equilibrium, but it's never going to be static, right? There's nothing static about it. Even inside of your body is always adjusting to the environment on the outside and the environment on the inside, right? So we talked yesterday about Libra ruling the adrenal glands and the kidneys and all of that. Well, your adrenals are always sending out hormones and adjusting the body's chemistry to react to whatever is going on in the outer environment, as well as whatever's going on your inner environment. So if something triggers you in the outside, and it's a fear, it will be the stress hormones perhaps that are triggered and start to flood your body with cortisol or any of the other hormones that create movement. So even in your own body, within you, unbeknownst to you, the universe is always working to try to keep it in balance, but it's never always in a homeostasis, right? It's never that way. It can try to keep it that way. So it's, I don't want you to think that the moon in Libra means that we're all coming to this total equilibrium or harmony space and there's no upset, because that's not true, right? It's always something, right, that's going to upset the balance. And it's our job then to try to keep it in as balanced an area, changing maybe something over here that brings this side up, or changing something on this side that brings this side up or down, right? Just to keep things going. It's kind of like juggling a little bit, right? Now, today, the moon is in Libra all day until we get to 7:31 p.m. this evening, West Coast time, 10:31 for you all on the East Coast. The moon will come into the void. And in the void, of course, she is not making any new contacts. And that will last until just after midnight, my time, just after 3 a.m. for those of you on the East Coast. And tomorrow we will start the day with the moon in Scorpio. So most of the day today is clear. We don't have to worry about the void. In fact, I think this is one that may be more effective in your dreams tonight. But we do have 4 transits that the moon will make today to planets that are interesting, let's say, that kind of want to, 2 really good ones that are kind of, keeping the balance of the scale on the good side, and the other 2 a little more disruptive that are trying to bring things down or up or change, right? Those waves, 2 creating waves and 2 trying to smooth the waves out. So it's so distinctly Libra. It's just sort of funny to think about that. So the first transit we encounter today is a trine from the moon to Venus. A trine is a 120-degree angle between the planets. And that means that it is a smooth flow of energy because they're in like elements. So we're talking about Venus in the sign of Gemini, the moon in the sign of Libra, both air. So the flow of the energy between those two planets, the moon and Venus, is smooth working, right? They understand each other. They can have a great conversation based on a subject that's mutually wonderful for both of them. And that subject is about sharing emotional pleasantness, right? Sharing fun, maybe laughter, maybe experiences, but there's a conversation here about the pleasant things in life that is occurring between the moon and Venus. Now, the Venus moon wonderful experience is followed shortly by a square, one of the more disruptive energies, with Pluto. So the moon in Libra comes into a square with Pluto in Capricorn. And these energies are obstacle making, crazy making, competition triggering. But specifically with Pluto, it can be about emotional momentum that can turn into compulsive behavior or those inner compulsions, right? So this would be where that person comes into your sphere, and immediately there's that reaction on your part about that emotional connection you have or don't have with that person, whatever it might be. And if that has turned into a habit, really a compulsion is sort of like a habit, but it's a little more powerful than that, almost like you feel like you can't help yourself with that. But if you stop before you act on that compulsion and breathe, then you give yourself that space to make a new decision. And here's the other part of all of this today with the moon in a square to Pluto: process your own damn stuff, right? Don't blurp it out there on other people. It isn't that other person's problem that they trigger that compulsive behavior in you. They're just the mirror for you to see that in yourself. So you're processing your own feelings. Don't project those things outward to other people. So managing your own emotional world and managing your own reactions or responses to what's happening in your world. And then that particular transit is followed by another nicer transit, small waves, right? Waves of a trine to the planet Mars. So we still have, let's see, Mars today is sitting at 24 of Aquarius, an air sign, and the moon, as she gets closer to that 24 degrees of Libra, will encounter then a trine, a smooth flow again with Mars energy. And Mars energy here, this is self-assertion. This is where we feel really good and comfortable in our own skin. And we can stand our ground. We can stand up for ourselves. We can be our own best friend rather than becoming our own worst enemy or sabotaging our forward momentum. This is high energy, and this comes later in the day, this afternoon, and it will be a time maybe for physical exercise. Get out and make some moves, do something physical. It's do something energy. So maybe if you're coming from that emotional square to Pluto, that you can put your hands and your mind and your body into some form of action that can help you move through that. Then the last energy that we have is a square for the moon from Libra to, again, Capricorn, and the planet Jupiter. Now, this is the last aspect that we have with the moon that will carry us through the night, right? So until the moon moves into Scorpio, this is the last aspect the moon will make. And this is with Jupiter. So even though it's a square and it's a challenge, it's a lesser challenge, right? The challenge here may be where out of those feelings of generosity and, magnanimity and feeling good and optimism that comes later in the day, that we become overly generous or we become overdoing or over imbibing. This is where we have to watch the proportionality of what we do. So, eating, drinking, dance, anything, right? Anything that you think of that you could do, you can overdo in a moon square Jupiter. So this also has a very interesting side trip, I think, that we can all take into doing some very deep soul work, doing some spiritual work, maybe getting your human design chart out and really looking deeper at it, maybe doing some contact tracing of your sun or your Earth's placement in your human design by looking at it deeper in the gene keys. So late in the day, as we move later in toward the void, of course, it might be a time for more deeper contemplation, but again, not overdoing that either, right? Keeping things sort of in a balance. So our moon today, very supportive of us in those small waves. And the other things that we spoke about being very much about moving through this energy of change at the same time while we are choosing how it is we're going to show up with that change or what it is we're going to do from a conscious space, from a response as opposed to a reaction. All right. That's it for me with the moon. How's everybody doing out there? Any other questions? I don't see any. Woohoo! Woohoo! Good morning, Kamal. Great to see you. I wondered where you'd been. Good to see you out there. So before I go today, I would like to, I don't know why that's on. I would like to get into our soul stories, our Wisdom Keeper's Inner Guidebook by Rosie Aronson, because remember yesterday we talked about the sun at the gate 2 and the earth at the gate 1. And the gate 1 being the most yang gate, the most masculine energy of the energies in the human design, and the gate 2, where the sun is, being the most yin gate. And how interesting that the sun, the one planet that we really think of in the masculine, is in the most feminine gate. And the earth, which we really think of as being the divine feminine, is in the most masculine gate. And that the energy then for this week was about seeking that balance and harmony between the masculine, the great energies, the great masculine and the great feminine. So I thought what I'd like to do today is read the story of where the earth is. We'll start with trying to balance the great divine feminine in the world of the generated masculine at the moment. And here's our card for that. The gift in this one is freshness. The shadow energy was entropy. And the highest expression is beauty, right? Beauty. So we see there's a lot of beauty in this face, right? Look at the color and just the cheeks. You just want to kiss her face. Okay, let's look at the story. The genius of freshness is to bring something to the world that no other has ever seen before. Here's the wisdom story. People say I was born with a big smile on my face, but as I grew up, I'd suddenly feel sad and depressed without warning, and it scared me. I wanted that low feeling to go away, so I tried to get rid of it. I avoided it, judged it, tried to cat heart it. I don't know what that means, but cathart it. So I tried to cathart it, then to fix it. I even tried to predict it and got pretty good at explaining it, but I still couldn't control it. The gloom came whenever it felt like coming, never asking for my permission. For a while, I managed to push the pain away by keeping myself nice and busy. I frenetically filled my calendar and life with people and activities, but eventually I burned out from all of that busyness. There were days, weeks, even months I couldn't get out of bed. I felt numb, like my life was deteriorating and taken over by entropy. I was convinced something was terribly wrong with my feelings and with me for having them. And I was certain that my sadness was keeping me from creating the life I knew I should have. One day, out of pure desperation, I gave up on judging and fighting the melancholy, and the strangest thing happened. It just went away in its own sweet time, like a cloud floating by, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And then to my delight, my creativity peeked out like the sun. Now, I allow myself plenty of alone time to simply be. I see my low moments as natural parts of life. I embrace them fully without overanalyzing. The less hard I work at it, the more I find joy and aliveness rising up from within me, as well as a natural desire to express that joy in a creative way. I now trust that it is actually healthy for me to burst forth with freshness and enthusiasm when joy appears, and then to withdraw and enjoy my solitude when my creative rumblings pull me inward. I have the best impact that way. My gift to you. When I look at you and you're feeling down, I know that nothing is innately wrong. Your wise body is recharging and something deep and creative is growing in your beautiful belly. Please do not worry if you don't have a clue about what's being born. Just do your best to trust and allow for your feelings and take a little me time. Soon enough, you will feel renewed and ready to burst out in the world with freshness and a new perspective. The more you learn how to embrace your sadness with open arms, the more energized people will feel when they are around you. They will see the light and the fire in your soul. Remember, the aliveness and beauty you see in me are in you too. Your joy is more resilient and contagious than you can even imagine, and its timing is perfect. So embrace where you are and trust that your bright light will always appear just when it can have its most inspiring impact. Here are questions for contemplation. Do you often find yourself judging, overanalyzing, or trying to get rid of certain feelings? How does this impact your body? Which of your feelings do you tend to push away the most because of its heaviness? Find a way to give yourself total permission to have and express this feeling today. Write about it in your journal. Share about it with someone you trust. Listen to a song or watch a movie that captures it. Make a simple feeling collage. Whatever you do, give it space and see what happens. And what simple act would bring more beauty into your life today? Lovely, lovely, lovely. That is beauty, right? Or freshness, and taking us out of that energy of entropy. And yay, thank you, Rosie Aronson, for those beautiful stories that we get to share with everybody. I'm going to do one last checkup over here on YouTube, see if anybody's had questions. I don't see any. So that is it for me today. I wish you all a pleasant day, finding your moving with change and weathering the small waves that are coming at us as the world seeks to embrace change. And we also seek to embrace that change. Take care, everybody. See you tomorrow. Bye for now.